Please welcome Jim O'Brien.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. We have a lot to cover and some very cool, innovative work. The background, first of all, of who we are. Some folks may not know us yet, but Aveco is one of the premier automation companies of the world with about 300 broadcasters utilizing our capability. For control, many are in the sports market. We have an example that I'll focus on a little bit more later, a 7-studio sports complex that operates as one facility. So you can take a rundown and move it from one PCR, one studio to the next, just in one button click. Moves across everything. We'll get into that more. One of the largest sports networks of the world, actually the largest, has us doing both master control and production automation in the same platform, operating as one unit, doing automated queue exchange and some other cool things. There's a big broadcast group in Germany, ARD, which has a building full of guys that hammer code to make sure there's no bugs left. And we've developed some very cool, innovative stuff for sports magazines. We'll talk briefly about that. So what we do is production automation, master control automation, multiple MAM integration, which is a very important topic for both local and multi-site operations. That's a mouthful, but it's some pretty cool stuff. So I'll just briefly touch on this to give some sense of the scope. You know, basically all of the world's production switchers, all of the world's virtual sets, camera robotics platforms, editing systems, all of those are, you know, month to month to month upgraded in our environment. So we have, you know, a very large software team that has devoted their life for 24 years to working well with all manufacturers so that you can get best of breed across the entire broadcast chain. And it allows for a level of software and operational integration that I think has a place and is appropriate to consider. And so in this case study, what we'll do is we'll focus on multi-studio and multi-MAM automation design and what that's about. So I mentioned briefly moving a rundown with one click, very practical, and that moves every element of the production. There's an underlying equipment facility management capability that lets you do this kind of thing. If you think of what it would take to move lots and lots of gear and lots of software architectures from one place to the next just by pressing a button, that introduces other opportunities such as self-healing operations. Let's say you have a video server fail, the backup goes to air, fine, but now don't you want a new backup? That should be an operational rule. And so we have this body of rules that lets you design the way to run a place that incorporates all kinds of equipment from all kinds of manufacturers and, you know, is something that you can rely upon. You know, we have places on the air 24 years, never missed a single time code. So one important thing about automation is the need to be responsive in fast changing conditions. Now, a lot of automation in the world has happened with, you know, pretty limited subsets of understanding and intention. And they work well in that context. But you have a long tradition of automation kind of being in the way when you have fast breaking news, sportscasts, sports magazines that have a lot of things happening quickly. So there's a whole subset of software that we developed to make that job easy. And you know, that's things like floating shots and the ability to automatically search across multiple MAMs. You know, turn on and off a graphics layer with one click. You got some breaking sports news, type it in and you're to air. Press another button, now you're back under automation control with all of the layers of the graphics platform. So one other thing, just as an aside, ergonomics is an important art that we, I think, want to maintain a focus on. And that involves hand control panels so the operators keep their eyes on the monitors. It makes them more responsive to director calls, and that's something that the TDs in the room I know have good sensitivity to. So I wanted to take just a moment about this 7-studio complex. you have discrete devices across lots of places, best of the best, you know, Carreras and Viz Graphics and, you know, Shotoku Robotics and, you know, Lotto Audio. You have the architecture so that any studio and any PCR is interoperable or combinable across the whole big facility. And that can extend to remote sites as well, where you may have smaller studios for little integrated production operations. So you have some piece fail, it can self-heal and keep you on the air in a great way. These are the nuances of how things work in a carefully architected design. So, a question of why to automate. Now, automation means different things to different people, but what the context I'm talking about automation is the ability to orchestrate things better than human beings can through manual cues. We've all, especially in the sports world, seen a big variety of the styles of directors, from the screamers to the guys who talk quietly and never waste a single word. And if you try to set up a lot of complex things involving multiple manufacturers' gear, you just can't do it verbally. You will do a simplistic television production. And one opportunity that good automation presents is the ability to plan a show and have very complex things of multiple manufacturers' equipment responding frame accurately that's easy to run. And that's what the art of the industry is about here. The idea is that automation should enhance the operator's skill and should make them more responsive, not less responsive to fast breaking conditions. So, keep the focus. You tell the story and let us control the gear, and we'll help you define how the look should be. And it increases the production value while substantially lowering costs. That's the goal of automation. One thing we developed with the ARD group of Germany, this is one of the cooler automation projects of recent memory, and I should have mentioned at the start, I have spent my life doing automation for the most part, 48 years in the business and helped design places in 41 countries, and I've been one of the automation guys that helped this spread around the world. So it's something that I've paid a lot of attention to over lots of years. And ARD Group of Germany had us automating their newscasts and running their master control, and they said, look, we're doing these news magazines, and they have a sports show, and people are making manual mistakes. Can you help us with this? Because they wanted a sophisticated look. So we developed with them an idea for studio recording that we call Take Two Studio Production Automation, and it's something that hasn't, we're honored to pioneer this with them. So the idea is you're doing a studio show, a director can just say cut. And you have a little timeline, I'll show you in a second, where you can re-cue. All right, let's pick it up 7 seconds before that guy started coughing, or before that guest, went out of his mind. Let's stop. So you can just re-cue, hit one button, get a pre-roll. Now take two is executing, do as many takes as you want, and at the end of the show, just press finish button, and it finishes, it auto-compiles the full program right there, right then. Outputs an EDL if you want to touch up something in editing, and outputs MAM markers to say, oh, instead of take 4, let's go back to take 2. And this resulted in a dramatic drop in the costs of these productions, over 90% according to one analysis. And it resulted in the same resources doing lots of shows, but most importantly, doing them with a much more advanced look. Doing sophisticated stuff is a great place to layer in automation. Easy to operate. So this is an example. Just note the timeline. You can just re-cue that little timeline that's controlling all of the gear and making it all synchronously happen so that you have an elegant-looking, sophisticated show that an operator is able to run easily and, very importantly, able to respond to fast-breaking stuff that wasn't planned. So running outside of a rundown. So just a little bit of background on Aveco, in terms of where we are in the industry, we work pretty much with every broadcast manufacturer of any significance. We have hundreds and hundreds of companies that we work with, so our entire focus is staying in our lane and working well with everybody and having great respect for all the cool innovations that so many manufacturers are doing, including in the IP world. So we have stuff in the cloud, in the rack, and in a box. In the cloud, we have our MAM architecture, which commonly integrates with multiple MAMs. We have one facility as an example. They have Quantel editing for fast sports turnaround. They have EVS subsystem for highlights, Avid editing, and then they've got another MAM running their archive. So as we ingest, we auto-populate all of the databases, and something changes, that ripples across everybody, and everybody's staying in sync. And they can't imagine working another way. So it's a really cool thing to do multiple MAMs in the cloud as well as just within a facility. So this is approximately the end of this presentation. A few minutes early, but I wanted to just step back and say that when you are considering how to architect the IP future, let's be cautious about how we deploy things. There's quite a bit of naivete happening in the business, and we're all trying and experimenting, and we're working with lots of manufacturers to do this kind of thing. But to step back and manage each step of operations in a way that it could be supported across many, many manufacturers, because we're at the early stage and people are kind of balkanization of the industry in this, and it's easy for a manufacturer to do everything our own way. Our developers do it all, but that's a pretty small part of the business. So our focus has always been work well with all manufacturers and be the software glue that makes an operational system working well and orchestrating all the stuff. So that's our little layer of contribution to the market, and all manufacturers have pride in what they do, and we would be honored to shop talk with anybody about how we might be able to help. Thanks very much.